Control. That has always been my favorite word. I controlled every move, every decision, every person around me like pieces on a chessboard. My name is Veronica Salas. I'm 34 years old, and for the last 7 years I've built an empire manipulating the most powerful men in Rio de Janeiro. Not with sex, that would be amateurish, but with information, secrets, sophisticated blackmail disguised as friendship. I was the woman everyone trusted, the perfect confidant, the discreet advisor who frequented the best restaurants in the South Zone and the VIP boxers at the most exclusive events. Nobody suspected that every conversation, every confidence, every secret whispered after the third glass of wine was being recorded, archived, catalogued. My contact list was worth more than gold. Judges, politicians, businessmen, celebrities. Everyone owed me favors. Everyone had something to hide. And I knew exactly where every skeleton was buried. I earned my first fortune at 27 by blackmailing a federal congressman who had an underage mistress. 50 million reais for my silence. He paid. Since then, I've perfected my method. It wasn't greed, understand. It was art. The art of reading people, of being in the right place, of asking the right questions. I thought I controlled every step, every variable, every possible outcome. I had plans A, B, C, and D for every situation. Until the day the improbable happened at the most critical moment, and everything I had built began to crumble. Let me explain how my world works, because it's important for you to understand before judging. I grew up in Bom Sucesso, a suburb of Rio. My mother was a manicurist, my father a bus driver. Honest, hardworking people who died poor and tired. I learned early on that honesty doesn't pay the bills. Beauty opens doors, but intelligence builds empires. And I had both. I studied in public school, but I was always the best in my class. I got a scholarship to study law at PUC. It was there that I discovered the world of the rich. And I realized something fundamental. They are all the same. Arrogant, careless, thinking they are untouchable. They make stupid mistakes and then look for someone to clean up the mess. I became that person. The one who solves problems. The one who makes things disappear. Lawsuits, compromising photos, inconvenient witnesses. Everything has a price, and my clients could pay. I never got emotionally involved. Love is for the weak. Relationships are temporary contracts where someone always loses. I prefer to be the one who profits. I built a perfect life. Apartment in Ipanema with an ocean view. Imported car. Designer clothes. Monthly international trips. All achieved through my intelligence and zero scruples. But 7 years manipulating powerful people taught me another lesson. The higher you climb, the harder you fall. And I was about to find that out the hard way. Before I continue this story, I want to know, which city are you watching from right now? Comment below. I want to get to know everyone who is following this journey. Whether you're from Rio, São Paulo, or anywhere in Brazil. Let's create a community here in the comments. Everything started to fall apart on an ordinary Tuesday. I was having lunch at the restaurant in the Copacabana Palace. With a new client, Armando Cabral, owner of a private hospital chain. He had a problem. A patient had died due to medical negligence, and the family wanted to sue. He needed the lawsuit dropped. I'd done this before. Bribing the right judge, pressuring the family, a few veiled threats. Routine. We agreed on 300,000 reais for my services. We sealed the deal with French champagne. When I returned home that afternoon, I found my door broken down. My apartment was in disarray. Drawers open, papers scattered, furniture overturned. But the worst part, my safe was open. Empty. Inside were all my files. Pen drives with recordings, documents, photos, 7 years of compromising material about the most powerful people in Rio de Janeiro. Everything was gone. My blood ran cold. Whoever did this wasn't after money. My jewelry was untouched. My laptop was still on the table. They wanted my files. My power. My protection. I immediately called my contact in the police, Detective Murat. He owed me favors. Many favors. He said he would come personally to check. While I waited, I analyzed the situation. The lock wasn't forced open. It was opened with a key, or skill. The biometric safe could only be opened with my fingerprint. Unless someone had access to very sophisticated technology. This wasn't a common robbery. It was professional. Someone knew me. Knew what they were looking for, and had the resources. Murat arrived an hour later. He looked around the apartment, pretended to be investigating, but I saw it in his eyes. He knew something. I pressed him. He initially resisted, but I reminded him of a specific video I had of him with his mistress in a motel. Oh wait, I didn't have it anymore. I realized at that moment how vulnerable I was. But I bluffed. I said I had copies in 3 different places. He believed me. He confessed that he had received orders from a superior not to investigate my case. Orders from whom? He couldn't say, or he didn't want to. Even with my threat, he was afraid of someone else. This was serious. When he left, I started calling my contacts. I needed to find out who was behind this. First I called Beatrice, my source, at the Internal Revenue Service. She had access to privileged information and owed me money after I made a tax evasion case against her husband disappear. She answered, but she was strange, nervous. She said she couldn't talk to me, that I should stop calling, and she hung up. I tried 3 more contacts. Same reaction. Fear, refusal, silence. In less than 24 hours, I had gone from Redditor to prey. Someone hadn't just stolen my files. Someone was using my own network against me, isolating me, cutting off my connections. That night, I received an email. No identified sender. Just 1 sentence and an attachment. The sentence, "You never had control, only his illusion." The attachment was a photo of me, taken at that exact moment through my apartment window. Someone was watching me. I closed all the curtains immediately. I grabbed my gun, a Glock I kept on the nightstand. I checked every room in the apartment. Nothing. I went back to the computer. I replied to the email, "Who are you and what do you want?" The answer came in seconds. "It's not about what I want. It's about what you're going to do. Tomorrow, 10 in the morning, Confiteria Colombo downtown. Back table. Come alone." I analyzed my options. I could not go, but whoever it was had already demonstrated the ability to find me. I could call security, but I didn't trust anyone now. Or I could go and find out who was playing with me. I chose the 3rd option. But I wouldn't go unarmed or unprepared. I spent the night researching. Who could have the resources to track me down like that? Some dissatisfied client who discovered I had material against them. Unlikely. They feared me too much. A competitor. There were no competitors at my level. I was unique. Federal police. Possible, but they wouldn't play that psychological game. They would arrest me directly. There was one option left that I didn't want to consider. Someone from outside. Someone bigger than my local connections. The next morning, I put on a discreet black outfit. I put the gun in my bag. I also placed a hidden recorder in my bra. If I was going to play this game, I would play by my own rules. I arrived at Confiteria Colombo 10 minutes early. I chose a strategic position where I could see all the entrances. I ordered a coffee. I waited. 10 o'clock arrived. No one appeared. 10:15. Nothing. I was about to leave when a waitress approached. She placed an envelope on my table. She said a man had asked her to deliver it. Which man? She pointed. But when I looked, there were dozens of people. I opened the envelope. Inside, a key and an address in Santa Teresa. The address was for an old mansion in Santa Teresa. Colonial facade, peeling paint, rusty iron gate. Typical of the abandoned historical properties in the neighborhood. I parked 2 blocks away. I walked, observing everything around me. Parked cars, people on the street, anything suspicious. Everything seemed normal. I arrived at the gate. The key in the envelope fit perfectly. I went in. The garden was overgrown with weeds. The house, from the outside, looked abandoned for years, but the main door was unlocked. I opened it slowly, hand on my weapon. Inside, silence. Little light entering through the dirty windows. Smell of mold. But then I noticed something strange. Recent footprints in the dust on the floor. Someone had been there recently. I followed the footprints. They led to the 2nd floor. Each step of the stairs creaked under my weight. My heart was racing, but I kept my breathing controlled. On the 2nd floor, a door ajar. Light coming from inside. I pushed the door open with my foot, weapon in hand. The room was clean, unlike the rest of the house. There was a table in the center, and on the table, an open laptop. On the screen, a paused video. I recognized the image immediately. It was me, in my apartment, talking to a client 3 months ago. The recording that was in my stolen safe. I approached the table. The video started playing by itself, and a voice, electronically distorted, came from the speakers. "Veronica Sales. 7 years manipulating, blackmailing, destroying lives. You think you're untouchable. But every empire has a weakness, and I found yours. I tried to trace where the transmission was coming from, but the program was too sophisticated. The voice continued, "You have 48 hours to hand over 20 million reais, or all these files will go to the federal police, to the press, and to every person you harmed. And knowing your work, there are many. 20 million reais. I had half of that in liquid assets. The rest was invested, immobilized. I would need time to liquidate it." I replied to the voice, "I need more time. 5 days minimum." The voice laughed, "You are not in a position to negotiate. 48 hours. Payment instructions will arrive soon." The laptop shut down by itself. I tried to turn it on again, but it was locked. Whoever was doing this had advanced technical knowledge. I left the house quickly. I needed to think. In the car, I analyzed the situation. Paying was admitting defeat, but not paying meant total exposure. Prison, end of everything. There was a third option. Find out who was behind this and eliminate them before the deadline. 48 hours. 2 days to hunt a ghost. I started with the stolen files. Who would be interested in them? I started making a mental list of everyone I had harmed in recent years. There were many. But how many would have the resources for that? I remembered a specific case. 2 years ago, Mauricio Lenz, a businessman in the technology sector. I had blackmailed him for embezzling public funds. He paid 5 million at the time. But unlike the others, he didn't seem scared. He seemed, calculating. As if he were weighing his options. And he had technical knowledge. A digital security company. Access to hackers. It made sense. I decided to investigate him. I spent the rest of the day researching. Mauricio had grown exponentially in the last 2 years. New contracts, international expansion. For someone I had bled 5 million from, he was doing very well. Perhaps too well. I needed privileged information about Mauricio. And I only knew one person who could get it without raising suspicion, Daniel Couto. A hacker I'd used on some previous jobs. He owed me favors. Many. I called his number. It rang 6 times before he answered. He was surprised by my contact. I rarely called directly. I explained that I needed information about Mauricio Lenz. Financial transactions, communications, everything. Daniel was silent. Then he said something that chilled me to the bone. "Veronica, you're messing with the wrong person. Hang up now and forget about this." How did he know? I pressed him, but he hung up. I tried calling again. Number out of service. In less than 2 minutes, Daniel had disappeared. This confirmed my suspicions. Mauricio was involved. And he had enough reach to silence even my most trusted contacts. I changed my strategy. If I couldn't investigate digitally, I would go physically. Mauricio lived in a luxury condominium in Barra da Tijuca. Heavy security, cameras everywhere. But I knew one of the cleaning ladies, Carla. She had worked there for 3 years. I got her number through an old contact. I called. I arranged a meeting at a diner in Madureira, away from prying eyes. Carla arrived, nervous. She said she was risking her job just talking to me. I offered her 10,000 reais to get me access to Mauricio's apartment. She initially refused. I offered 20,000. She accepted. We arranged to meet the following night. Mauricio had a dinner reservation out. Carla would let me in. I would have 30 minutes to find what I needed. It was risky, but the clock was ticking. 18 hours had already passed since the ultimatum. The following night, I put on the cleaning uniform Carla had given me. I tied my hair back, put on reading glasses, transformed my appearance. She met me at the service entrance at 9 o'clock. We passed the security guards without any problems. We went up to the 14th floor. Mauricio's apartment. She opened the door, gave me 25 minutes, said she would come back to get me. I went in. The apartment was minimalist. Technology everywhere. Screens, computers, devices I didn't even know what they were for. I started with the office. I searched drawers, cabinets. Nothing relevant. Papers about legitimate contracts. I turned on the main computer. Locked with a password and facial recognition. I didn't have time to try to hack it. I kept searching. In the bedroom, I found a safe built into the wall behind a painting. A digital safe. I tried some obvious combinations. His birthday, important dates, nothing. 10 minutes remained. I was about to give up when I noticed something. A tiny camera in the corner of the ceiling, pointed directly at where I was. My blood ran cold. I looked around. There were cameras in every room. Cameras that weren't visible when I entered, or I hadn't noticed them. I ran to the door. I tried to open it. Electronically locked. I pulled out my cell phone. No signal. Frequency blocker. It was a trap. And I had fallen for it like an amateur. The living room television turned on by itself, and the same distorted voice I heard in the mansion appeared. Veronica, Veronica. Always so confident. But you just made your first fatal mistake. Now you're in my territory. And I control everything here. I kept calm. Panicking wouldn't solve anything. I answered aloud. What do you want? The voice laughed. I already said, 20 million. But now that you've invaded my property, the price has gone up. 30 million. And you have 24 hours. I tried to reason, to negotiate, but the voice interrupted me. The door will open in 10 minutes. You will leave, and you won't try to investigate me again. Or next time, you won't be so merciful. The television turned off. I stood there, processing. He was playing with me, demonstrating power, humiliating me. Exactly what I did to my victims. The irony didn't go unnoticed. 10 minutes later, the door unlocked with an electronic click. I left quickly. Carla was in the hallway, pale. She whispered, I'm sorry. They paid me to bring you here. Before I could react, she ran. I went down the service stairs. I didn't want to cross paths with security guards. When I arrived at the parking lot, my car had a note on the windshield. 24 hours. Don't let me down. I drove home on autopilot. My mind was processing everything. Mauricio was psychologically torturing me before destroying me. He didn't just want money. He wanted to see me suffer. When I got home, I sat on the sofa, and for the first time in years, I felt something I wasn't used to. Real fear. Not fear of losing money, but fear of losing control. Of being the victim. Of being on the other side of the game. I needed to change my strategy. Stop reacting and start acting. If Mauricio wanted 30 million, I would give it to him. But not without guarantees. And not without a plan B that he wouldn't see coming. I spent the night liquidating assets. Stocks, investments. I called in favors from people who owed me money. In 12 hours, I managed to gather 22 million. I was 8 million short. I needed a quick source. I remembered Gustavo Amarel, a businessman from whom I had compromising material involving He had never paid me because the process was still ongoing, but now I needed to expedite it. I called. He answered suspiciously. I said I needed 8 million immediately. He laughed. You're desperate. I can feel it in your tone. I admitted I was in a delicate situation. He took advantage. Okay, 8 million. But I want my files back. All of them. I don't have your files anymore, I confessed. He remained silent. Then he said, then I have no reason to pay you. And he hung up. I slammed my fist on the table in anger. I was cornered. Without my files, I had no power. Without power, I had no money. Without money, I couldn't pay Mauricio. And without paying Mauricio, everything would come to light. I was in a downward spiral. There was one option left. The riskiest one. To seek help from someone as corrupt as me, and I knew exactly who that person was. Jose Uchinoku, a racketeer. He controlled illegal gambling, loan sharking, and had connections with criminal factions. I had files on him too. Or I did. But unlike businessmen and politicians, Rogerio wasn't afraid of exposure. He was already known. What he feared was competition. And 2 years ago, I helped him eliminate a rival through insider information. He owed me money. I called his number. A security guard answered. I said I needed to speak with Rogerio urgently. Half an hour later, he returned the call. I explained my situation, omitting some details, but saying I needed 8 million borrowed. He listened in silence. Then he said, I'll meet you in an hour. Port docks. Come alone. The port docks at night are deserted. Only containers, closed warehouses, and the sound of the waves. I arrived at the agreed time. 2 black SUVs were already parked. Armed men stood outside. Rogerio got out of one of the cars. In his 50s, a dress shirt, a thick gold chain around his neck. A smile of someone who's seen it all. He greeted me with a kiss on the cheek. Veronica. I never thought I'd see you so desperate. I was direct. 8 million. You lend it, I'll pay it back in 3 months with 20% interest. He lit a cigar. And if you don't pay it back, I'll pay it back. He walked around me, assessing me. You've always been too proud. arrogant, thinking you were better than all of us, and now look at you. Begging a criminal. I held back my anger. Do you accept or not? He took a long drag. I accept, but I don't want the money back. I want a favor. The favor I ask for, when I ask for it, no questions asked. It was a dangerous blank check, but I had no choice. I accept. He extended his hand. We shook it. He made a sign, and one of the men brought a backpack. Inside cash. 8 million. He said, now you belong to me, Veronica. Remember that. I took the backpack and left. I had the money. 30 million in full. Now I needed to make the transfer and hope that Mauricio would keep his word. But something told me this was far from over. I arrived home at 5 in the morning. 3 hours until the deadline. My cell phone beeped. Message with transfer instructions. Account in a tax haven. Untraceable. I made the transfer. 30 million. All my fortune, plus an unpayable debt to a criminal. I waited for confirmation. 10 minutes, 20, an hour. Nothing. I called the number that sent the instructions. Out of service. I panicked. Had I been robbed? While I was processing the possibility of having lost everything, my cell phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. It was a distorted voice. Transfer confirmed. You are obedient when necessary. But our game isn't over. My voice came out tense. You said you would return my files. The voice laughed. I said I wouldn't disclose them. I never said I would return them. They are my insurance. Against you doing something stupid in the future. I realized then. It was never about money. Mauricio wanted control. Over me, over my life. Exactly what I did to others. You turned me into one of your victims, I accused. The voice replied, now you know how they feel. And hung up. I sat there, in the silence of my apartment. Financially broken, owing a favor to a criminal. A hostage of someone who had my files. Everything I built in 7 years, destroyed in 48 hours. But then, something changed inside me. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't despair. It was anger. Cold, calculated anger. Mauricio made a mistake. He left me alive. And as long as I was alive, the game wasn't over. I spent the next few days in survival mode. I sold my car. I put my apartment up for sale. I cut expenses to a minimum. I needed to rebuild from scratch. But this time, with a clear objective, revenge. I started investigating Mauricio in a different way. No longer his business dealings, but his personal life, family, friends, lovers. Everyone has a weakness. I needed to find his. I discovered he had a daughter, 17 years old. She studied at a private school in the South Zone, and she had a boyfriend that Mauricio didn't approve of. A guy from the favela. A forbidden relationship. Interesting. I started following Mauricio's daughter, discreetly, from afar. Her name was Julia. Beautiful, spoiled, a typical rich teenager, but also rebellious. She met her boyfriend in secret. She lied to her father. She frequented places he would never approve of. She was the perfect rift. One afternoon, I approached her at a shopping mall. I pretended it was a casual encounter. I said I knew her father through business. I struck up a conversation. She was receptive, perhaps craving attention. We met a few more times. Coffee, conversations about fashion, music. I gained her trust. And then, casually, I mentioned that I knew about her boyfriend. She panicked. She begged me not to tell her father. I reassured her. I said I thought their love was beautiful. That her father was too controlling. That she deserved to be happy. I planted the right seeds. 2 weeks later, Julia told me a secret. Her father was having problems with a business partner. Arguments, threats. The partner was being investigated by the federal police and wanted to drag Mauricio along. It was the information I needed. I investigated this partner, Lucas Prado. He had companies in common with Mauricio, and he was actually being investigated for money laundering. If I could get evidence linking Mauricio, I could turn the tables. But I needed access. And I had an idea of how to get it. Through Julia, I asked her for a favor. I said I wanted to give her father a surprise gift, but I needed to get into his office to leave it. She believed me. She gave me an access card. I was in. I scheduled it for a night when Mauricio would be traveling. Julia confirmed the trip. I entered the commercial building where his office was located. There were night security guards, but the card worked. I went up to the 8th floor. The office was empty. I had 2 hours before the security patrol. I went straight to the computers. I needed evidence linking Mauricio to Lucas's money laundering. I tried to access the system. Locked. But I remembered Julia mentioning that her father used her birthday in many passwords. I tried. It worked. I was inside the system. Files and more files. Contracts, transactions, emails. I searched for anything involving Lucas. I found an encrypted folder, but the encryption was basic. I cracked it in 15 minutes. Inside, compromising documents, suspicious transfers, shell companies. Mauricio was up to his neck in illegal schemes, far beyond what I imagined. I copied everything to a pen drive. I was about to leave when I heard the office door open. Shit. I hid under the desk. Footsteps. Someone had entered. The light came on. I tried to peek. It was Mauricio. How was he there? He must be traveling. My heart raced. He walked towards the computer. He noticed it was unlocked. He stopped. He looked around. He said aloud, "I know you're here, Veronica." I froze. He continued, "Julia told me about her new friend. She showed me pictures. Do you think I wouldn't recognize you?" I realized. He let me in on purpose. It was another trap. I came out from under the table. He was leaning against the table, arms crossed, smiling. "Congratulations," he said. "You're persistent but also predictable." I kept my voice firm. "I have evidence against you now." He laughed. "And what are you going to do? Blackmail me like you do with everyone? Aren't you tired of this game?" "Exactly," I replied. "I'm tired. So let's end this. Either you give me back my files, or I hand all this over to the federal police." He stopped smiling. "If you do that, you'll be arrested too. Your crimes are in these files." True, but I was willing to take the risk. We remained silent, assessing each other. Then Mauricio said something unexpected. "Do you know why I did all this? Why I pursued you?" I didn't care. But he continued. "Because you destroyed my sister." I was confused. "Which sister?" he explained. "Fernanda Lenz. 3 years ago, you had material on her. An extramarital affair. You blackmailed her for $2 million. She paid, but she couldn't handle the pressure, the fear of being exposed. She killed herself." I vaguely remembered the case. A woman, a politician's wife. Depressed, she paid too quickly, without negotiating. Later, I heard she had committed suicide. I never connected the dots. I felt something strange. Not complete remorse, but something close. Mauricio had tears in his eyes. "She was everything to me. Our only family. And you destroyed her for money." I didn't know. That's all I could say. He continued. "Of course, I didn't know. You never cared about the consequences of your actions. For you, we were just numbers, targets, sources of income." He was right. But admitting it would be weakness. Then I attacked. "And you're any different. Torturing me, robbing me, manipulating me." He stopped. "No. I'm exactly like you. That's why I know exactly how to destroy you." He pulled a remote control from his pocket. He pressed a button. Televisions in the office turned on. On each one, scenes of me committing crimes, bribing, blackmailing, confessions from victims. It was all edited, assembled like a documentary. He said, "This will air on every channel in an hour. Unless you give up." Give up what? Everything. Vanish, disappear. Never come back to Rio. Never blackmail anyone again. And maybe, just maybe, I'll let you live in peace. I looked at the screen, my life being exposed. Then I looked at him. And I made a decision. I told Mauricio, "No." He seemed surprised. "No," I explained. "If you release this, you expose me, but you also expose yourself. The evidence I copied links you to federal crimes. We can destroy each other. Or we can negotiate." He reflected. "What kind of negotiation?" "Simple. You erase everything about me. I erase everything about you. And we go on with separate lives. No revenge, no persecution. An armistice." He laughed humorlessly. "You're not trustworthy. Neither are you," I retorted. "That's why we'll do it differently. We'll leave copies with third parties, lawyers, with instructions to disclose if anything happens to either of us. Mutual destruction assured." He considered the proposal. Then he nodded. "Clever. But I want something more. Your contacts, your network, all the people you manipulated. I want their names." I refused immediately. "That's asking too much," he insisted. "It's the price for peace." I thought. My network was everything. But it was also a prison. Maybe it was time to let go. I accepted. "Okay, but on one condition. You pay my debt to Ruggiero Tinoco, 8 million plus interest. He hesitated, then agreed. Done. We shook hands. A deal between villains. In the following days, we organized everything. Lawyers prepared documents. Transfers were made. Files were exchanged and then deleted, with copies kept in safe deposit boxes. It was strange. After months of pursuing me, we were working together. Efficiently, as partners. One night, during one of these meetings, Mauricio asked, "Do you feel remorse for what you did to Fernanda? To everyone else?" I honestly thought, I feel remorse for Fernanda. I didn't know she was so fragile. But the others, most of them deserved it. He nodded. I don't feel remorse for pursuing you either. But I'm tired. I'm tired of living for revenge. I understood perfectly. The deal was finalized. Mauricio paid Rogério. I handed over my contact list. It was all over. I sold my apartment. I bought a small house in Petropolis, in the mountains of Rio, far from the city, far from temptations. I spent months in isolation, reading, thinking, re-evaluating choices. For the first time in years, I didn't have a plan. I had no goals. It was strangely liberating. One day, I received a letter. It was from Julia, Mauricio's daughter. She said she had discovered that her father and I had had conflicts, but she didn't know the details. She thanked me for the friendship, even if brief. She said she admired me for being strong and independent. She ended with, "I hope to be like you when I grow up." I tore up the letter. She shouldn't want to be like me. Nobody should. But the letter made me think, what legacy would I leave? What mark on the world? Only destruction. I decided to do something different. Something I never imagined doing. I started volunteering at an NGO that helped women who were victims of domestic violence. I used my legal knowledge to help them obtain protective measures, to rebuild their lives. I didn't do it out of kindness. I did it out of necessity. The necessity to prove to myself that I could create something, instead of just destroying. The women didn't know my past. To them, I was just Veronica, the volunteer lawyer. And for the first time, I liked how my name sounded without fear or resentment associated with it. 6 months later, Mauricio called me. He said he was impressed with my change, that he had heard about my work at the NGO through acquaintances. He asked if I was really different or if it was another manipulation. I told the truth, I don't know. I'm trying to be different, but I don't know if people like us can really change. Life in Petropolis was quiet, almost boring, but I was learning to appreciate boredom. It was better than constant adrenaline and paranoia. One afternoon, receiving supplies in the city, I noticed a man watching me. An ancient instinct made my body go on alert. He approached, 30-something, simple clothes, a determined look. He said, "You are Veronica Sales." It wasn't a question. It was a statement. I cautiously confirmed. He continued, "You destroyed my family. 5 years ago. You blackmailed my father over an affair he had. My mother found out through you. They divorced. My father sank into debt, paying you and the divorce. He never recovered. He died last year. Heart." I vaguely remembered the affair. A dentist. An affair with an assistant. Conservative wife. I paid $300,000 at the time. I told the man, "I'm sorry about your father. But he made choices." He pressed on. "Choices, you extorted him." Security guards from the store began to approach. I raised my hand, signaling that everything was all right. I told the man, "You're right. I did terrible things. And I can't undo them. But I can offer you something." He was confused. "What?" "Money. It's not much. But I can help pay off debts your father left behind." He laughed bitterly. "You think money solves everything. It doesn't, but it's the only language I know how to speak." He stared at me. Then he said, "I don't want your money. I want you to know that your actions have consequences, that they leave marks." "I know," I answered honestly. "Believe me, I know." He turned and left. I stood there, in the middle of the store, processing. How many more people were like him? How many lives had I destroyed without even remembering? The encounter with the dentist's son shook me. More than I expected. I spent weeks restless. The work at the NGO didn't seem enough. It was easy compensation, helping strangers so I wouldn't think about who I had harmed. I decided to do something more difficult. I started making a list. All the people I remembered harming. Names, situations, how much I charged. It was a long list, 47 people. I tried to find each one. Some had moved, others had died, but I found 23. I wrote letters to each one. Not asking for forgiveness, because that would be hypocritical, but acknowledging the harm I had caused. Offering to return the money I extorted, with interest. I didn't expect answers, but I received 12. 6 cursing me, 3 refusing the money but thanking me for the acknowledgement, and 3 accepting the return. One specific answer struck me. It was from a woman, Laura, a businesswoman I had blackmailed for tax evasion. She wrote, "Veronica, I spent 5 years angry with you, but I also learned that carrying anger only poisoned my life. I don't want your money, but I accept your admission, and I hope you find peace." I cried reading that letter. I don't remember the last time I truly cried. I replied, thanking him. Months passed. My life remained simple. Work at the NGO, home in Petropolis, reading, walks. It wasn't exciting, but it was honest. One day, Mauricio appeared at my door. Unannounced. He said he was in the area on business. I asked if that was true. He admitted it wasn't, that he wanted to see how I was doing. We talked for hours. About everything. About regrets. About second chances. About whether bad people can become good. Mauricio confessed something during our conversation. I'm also trying to change. I sold the companies involved in the schemes. I'm focusing on legitimate businesses. It's not as lucrative, but I sleep better. I understood perfectly. I asked about Julia, he smiled. I let her date the guy she likes. I met him. He's a good guy. I was wrong. Admitting mistakes was something none of us had done before. Before leaving, he said, "You know we'll never be good people, right? Even if we try. Our past doesn't erase itself." I agreed. I know. But we can be less bad. Less destructive. He nodded. That's enough. After he left, I reflected. We spent our whole lives manipulating, controlling, destroying, thinking that control was power. But the improbable happened at the most critical moment. We lost control. And that saved us. Because, deep down, absolute control over others is imprisonment for oneself. Weeks later, the NGO coordinator offered me a paid job. Full-time lawyer. Modest salary. I accepted. For the first time in years, I would have an honest income. A normal work day, attending to a new client. A young woman, beaten by her husband. Scared, needing help. As I explained the legal procedures, filled out paperwork, called authorities, I realized something. I was using the same skills as before. Manipulation transformed into negotiation. Blackmail transformed into legal pressure. Coldness transformed into professional objectivity. I wasn't a new person. I was the same person using my talents differently. And maybe that was okay. Maybe redemption isn't about becoming someone completely different, but about using who you are to cause less harm and, if possible, some good. A year after the end of the conflict with Mauricio, I received an unexpected offer. A publisher wanted me to write a book about my story, crimes, manipulations, downfall, and attempts at reconstruction. I initially refused. But the editor insisted. People need to understand how someone's mind works, not to glorify, but to prevent, to understand. I thought about it for weeks. It would be a public admission of crimes that had already expired, total exposure. But it would also be final honesty. I accepted on one condition. Part of the profits would go to the NGO. I spent 6 months writing. Each chapter was painful. Reliving choices, admitting evil deeds. But it was also cathartic. The book was published under a pseudonym. Even so, it generated controversy. Some said it glorified crimes. Others, that it was an important lesson. I didn't care. I wrote for myself. 2 close chapters. To accept who I was and who I am trying to be. Today, 2 years after it all began, I wake up in Petropolis. I have coffee looking at the mountains. I work helping women. I read books. I occasionally talk to Mauricio, who has become something close to a friend. I don't have the luxuries I used to have. I don't have power. I don't have constant fear either. And that's worth more. I still dream sometimes. Nightmares where I'm being chased, or where I'm the chaser. I wake up sweating, heart racing, and I remember that life is over. I'm free now. Free from control. Free from the need to manipulate. Free from the villain I was. People ask me if I've really changed. I answer honestly, I don't know. I only know that I'm trying. And for someone who has never tried before, that's already progress. The improbable happened. And it gave me the only thing I never sought, a chance to start over. This is my story. Of lost control. of a destroyed empire, of a villain trying to be human. I don't expect you to understand me. I only hope you learn. Nobody is untouchable. And second chances exist, if we have the courage to seek them.